Hi, it's Katrina. Number 10. Egyptian Stargates. A Stargate is a portal that can be used to travel from one point in the universe to another, or really anywhere. Theoretically, a Stargate would allow a person to walk through a portal from, let's say, ancient Egypt to another portal in Peru. Alternatively, a Stargate could be used for a one-way trip from an unknown planet straight to ours. The existence of Stargates has been debated ever since the theory of general relativity and Einstein in the 1930s. But did bridges across space-time truly exist? And did the ancient Egyptians have access to one? No one knows for sure. However, there are several places in Egypt where some believe a Stargate may have once been. One of the more famous locations is the temple at Abydos, which contains 3 mysterious chambers that have been identified as a Stargate. The hieroglyphs on the walls seem to suggest the chambers functioned as elevators to another world. Historians say the hieroglyphs are nothing but ancient Egyptian symbology. Others believe it's possible the hidden chambers were once used by intergalactic beings to travel back and forth from Egypt. Another potential location for a Stargate in Egypt is Hatshepsut's temple. It is one of the most dramatic-looking ruins anywhere in Africa. There's a grand concourse which leads to a huge ramp, which then leads directly into the back of the temple and to a mysterious forbidden area. This is a place where tourists aren't allowed to go. Oddly enough, these same hieroglyphs from the Stargate chambers at the temple at Abydos can be seen here, beyond the gate that tourists aren't allowed access to. Number 9. The Lost Roman Emperor. Researchers were investigating a coin house at the University of Glasgow when they found something shocking. The coin was a bit of an anomaly because experts had already deemed it a forgery. The coin came from a treasure hoard discovered in Transylvania in 1713. The treasure hoard contained 4 coins featuring the face of Roman Emperor Sponsian. They were all deemed fakes because Emperor Sponsian supposedly never existed. The only mention of him comes from the 4 coins found in Romania. When the researchers started investigating, they didn't know what they would find, but they soon uncovered minerals on the surface of the coin which indicate it was buried for over 1,000 years. The natural wear on the coin also shows that it was active and in circulation during the Roman period. Suddenly, the coin wasn't a fake anymore, and Emperor Sponsian was a real person. This discovery has revealed an insane story from just over 1,700 years ago. The Roman province of Dacia was in the territory of modern Romania. Archaeologists believe the region, for an unknown reason, was cut off from the bulk of the Roman Empire around 260 AD. Archaeological evidence shows that the people of the province were then evacuated back into Rome about 11 years later. So, where does the emperor fit in with all of this? There is a chance that when the Roman province became cut off from the rest of Rome, Sponsian, previously an army officer, assumed the supreme command. He then had his face imprinted on coins as he tried to dominate his own little section of Rome. The reason there are only a few coins of him is because they didn't get made anywhere else. Number 8. The Skeleton Spiral. Scientists are baffled by a spiral of ancient skeletons discovered in Mexico. In the city of Tlalpan, professional excavations revealed a burial site 2,400 years old. Burial sites are nothing new, but this one contains something researchers had never even heard of before. They found skeletons laid in a spiral pattern, obvious evidence of an unknown ritual practice. The discovery of the ancient site happened in 2006. Ever since then, archaeologists from Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History have been busy searching for clues of the lost civilization. It was only recently that they'd uncovered the spiral skeleton buried 4 feet underground. The remains include 2 women, 1 man, a child, and an infant. And here's where things get even more mysterious. Each dead person in the spiral suffered from cranial deformation. This means they must have been indigenous to the area. They deformed their skulls by binding them tightly with fabric, creating a cone shape. Although scientists are stumped, they do have some theories. Jimena Rivera from the Pontifical University of Mexico says the spiral may have been an interpretation of life. Because the individuals appear to all have been different ages, it could have been meant as a symbolic turning of the wheel of time or something like that. A baby, a child, a young adult, a slightly older adult, and finally a senior. However, it's all just speculation right now. The settlement was built around 1000 BC, way before the Aztec Empire ever even existed. Number 7. The Secret Assassination. An encrypted letter was recently discovered that seems to prove a previously unknown assassination attempt on Charles V in the 16th century. Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor and King of Spain, was one of the most powerful men that Europe has ever seen. However, nobody was really that fond of him. In 1547, Charles wrote a letter to his ambassador in France, Jean de Saint-Marie. This mysterious letter was kept, preserved, and eventually stored at the Stanislas Library in Nancy, France, where it collected dust for centuries. But in 2021, cryptographer Cécile Pierrot discovered the letter and cracked its secret code. The letter was hardly readable. It took 4 researchers and a historian from the University of Picardy 6 long months to figure out what it said. Finally, they were able to see that the letter discussed the degradation of the relationship between King Francis I of France and Emperor Charles V. It was incredibly difficult to decipher because Charles wrote the letter cryptically. He used fake symbols that didn't make sense to anyone trying to read it. He also mixed up vowels and consonants and used other secret symbols to confuse the words. But in the end, modern cryptographers cracked the code. Not only did the letter discuss the general mood between France and the Holy Roman Empire, but it also discussed a failed assassination attempt. Charles was sure that the King of France was trying to have him killed, although historians never knew anything about this plot. Researchers are now hoping that they can track down other lost letters to learn more about the secret life of one of Europe's last emperors. And now for number 6, but first it's shoutout time! Big thank you to Blaine Acevedo and Honesty Loves Company for supporting this channel. Are you ready to join the Origins Explained family? Be sure to hit that subscribe button before you go. Number 6. Mummy Portrait Mystery. Ancient Egyptian mummy portraits have been a curiosity to archaeologists for centuries. The discovery of these unique Egyptian mummies happened in the 1800s in the city of Fayum. The portraits were a new innovation during the Roman rule of Egypt. Upper-class citizens started having their coffins decorated with fabulous portraits of themselves. Either that, or they had their portraits painted on wooden slabs and then stuck over the face of their mummy inside the coffin. The idea was for their portraits to live on forever, even as their physical bodies decayed. These were done starting in the 1st century BC and continued up until around the 3rd century AD. But there has always been a mystery to the portraits. Who painted them? What was the purpose? And were the paintings done prior to death or after? Conservator Marie Svoboda teamed up with the Getty Museum in Los Angeles to solve these mysteries. Inspecting dozens and dozens of paintings, Marie was able to learn that almost all the portraits depicted young people in their 20s or 30s. This made her suspect that the portraits were done prior to death, kind of like picking out your funeral plot years before you die. But when they did CT scans on the mummies, they found the age of the portraits matched almost identically with the age the people were when they died. The reason for so many young mummies was that the lifespan was extremely short in ancient Egypt. Most young people died due to infections or from giving birth. In the end, it looks like this was a fad for wealthy Romans living in Egypt over the course of about 4 centuries. Number 5. The Giant Skeleton of Saudi Arabia. During a recent gas exploration mission in Saudi Arabia, the skeleton of a gigantic human being was allegedly discovered. According to the story that recently started circulating online, it happened in the east region of the Arabian desert known as the Empty Quarter. But the region is far from empty. The exploration team was shocked to see the remains of a human so big, his skull alone was the size of an ordinary man. Only a single picture escaped the discovery, taken by a military helicopter and leaked online. The skeleton makes it look as if the person had been upwards of 50 feet tall, something that scientists will tell you is 100% impossible. According to Snopes, the image of the giant skeleton is fake. The picture is of a real excavation site, but the site is in New York, not Arabia. The workers were also excavating a mastodon skeleton, not the skeleton of a human. However, people love to take every potential discovery of giants seriously. In almost every mythology in the world, ancient people speak of a race of giants. They are in the Bible, Greek mythology, and even in the Old Norse sagas. Even Native Americans believed in a race of giants who roamed North America. Typically, legends all have their roots in reality, so there must have been a group of exceptionally giant humans. But the evidence is either being purposely erased, or we just haven't found it yet. Number 4. The Lost Islands of Cardigan Bay. In the 13th century text called the Black Book of Carmarthen, a mysterious land called Maes Gwydno is described. I'm probably not saying that right. The book tells the story of a great land off the coast of Wales that was lost to flooding when a maiden allowed a well to overflow. The next mention of the mysterious sunken land is in the 17th century. Yet another ancient text describes almost the exact same thing happening. Only this time, the lost land is called Cantre'r Gwaelod, and instead of a maiden who neglected her duties, it was a drunk prince who forgot about the gates holding back the seawater, resulting in the flooding of the entire kingdom. Nobody has ever been able to find the ruins of the legendary sunken city. Some have called it the Atlantis of Wales, and nobody really believed it existed. It wasn't until Professor Simon Hazlitt from Swansea University discovered the best proof yet that scientists were forced to accept the reality. Hazlitt discovered one of the oldest maps in Britain at the Bodleian Library called the Go Map. And right there on the map, which was made in the 13th century, is an island at the very place where Cantre'r Gwaelod supposedly once stood. What we have here is confirmation of a real lost city, one that still has not been found. But even though the archaeological evidence hasn't been physically discovered, the texts and maps are proof enough. It's safe to say that there was a mysterious city near Cardigan Bay that sank 700 years ago. Number 3. Human echolocation. Human beings may have used echolocation hundreds of thousands of years ago to explore dark and gloomy caves. At least that's what University of Huddersfield archaeologist Rupert Till believes. He says that just like how bats use echolocation to find their way around, humans used their own form of biological sonar to explore caves in prehistoric times. Rupert and his team of scientists recently carried out experiments in Bedelhat Cave located in France. They wanted to learn if humans still have some remnants of their alleged echolocation abilities intact. Unfortunately, the results of the experiment were mixed from the start. Some volunteers didn't take it seriously and burst into laughter. Some experienced sudden fear, and the experiment had to be aborted. There were no obvious results if humans could find their way around a completely pitch-black cave chamber with nothing but their own voice. But then something happened. The experiment participants adapted. After a while, they began making their way through the darkness much more skillfully. They stopped bumping into walls as frequently, and really did seem to use their voices to estimate where the objects were around them. Rupert, along with other scientists such as Stanford acoustics researcher Miriam Kolar, are now convinced that echolocation is a lost sixth sense that human beings once possessed. Number 2. The Hall of Records. The Hall of Records is a mythical ancient library that some believe is hidden underneath the Great Sphinx of Giza. And although there is no solid evidence that the hall ever existed, that hasn't stopped the likes of New Age pseudo-archaeologists from claiming it to be real. The legend is that underneath the Sphinx is a buried library which contains secret knowledge of the ancient world. The Hall of Records allegedly has proof of Atlantis, documents discussing the magical techniques of ancient Egyptian priests, and other secret knowledge collected from around the globe. The Hall of Records is even said to contain the most important historical texts saved from the Library of Alexandria after its destruction. But nobody has ever found it. One of the most controversial attempts to break through the ceiling of the library happened 3 decades ago. Researchers supposedly got permission from the Egyptian government to drill through the paw of the Sphinx. They drilled over 20 feet deep, nearly ruined the ancient monument, and still didn't find anything. That said, scans and seismic readings have shown chambers underneath the Sphinx, yet nobody dares to drill into the ground again. These chambers could be nothing but natural cavities, or they could be untouched rooms containing the forbidden knowledge of the pharaohs. Number 1. The Petroglyphs of Hawaii. Throughout Hawaii, there are petroglyphs carved into lava rock and stone, made centuries ago by the island's indigenous people. And although the real meaning behind them is currently unknown, scientists do have some theories. They believe the petroglyphs may have been used as a way to record significant events. People likely carved them to record births, deaths, and anything important that happened in the community. There are petroglyphs of strange human forms, canoes, random animals, and a lot of turtles. Inside Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, there are 23,000 images carved into solidified lava. The oldest of these carvings was made about 800 years ago. They aren't only in the national parks either. The carvings can be found almost everywhere on the Big Island, where hardened lava is out in the open, suggesting they were an important aspect of island life. Individual Hawaiian families likely made their own petroglyphs as secret recordings of their lives, and for this reason we will never know the truth behind them. Their meanings were almost certainly lost with the people who made them back in 1200 AD. Thanks for watching! Do you think the Hall of Records ever really existed? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. See you next time. Bye!